For me, so the first stop is always Stack Overflow. I mean, it used to be Google, and then that would probably the first hit would be Stack Overflow, but I tend to just go straight there now because it's just such a great resource. Like it covers everything. There's no, you can pretty much find anything, and probably 98 times out of 100, the thing you've run into someone else has, and someone's got a succinct answer. So that's a brilliant resource. That's definitely the first place I go.
I usually start at Stack Overflow, and I do a search there. I do a Google search. If both of those don't work, then I may look at the Apple developer forums, in our case, and look there. If I don't have luck there, I may ping a few friends to see if they know. But usually that's a long shot, and the problem is these are usually domain-specific problems. You're building something very calendar deep. You're going to have calendar-specific issues. If we're unable to find an answer in any of those different areas, then we ultimately just email Apple and ask themselves. And they sometimes can be very responsive, but sometimes they also take a week or two. And it's not necessarily the answer you want to hear.
Like, if there's an API problem, certainly Google and Stack Overflow are the best places to start. And specifically when you have an API name that you're calling, that's, it's so easy to find people who have had the same problem these days. So those are really our go-to spots. And so, like, for example, Google App Engine recently switched all of their developer support to Stack Overflow out of Google Forms or whatever it was that they were using before. And it made a huge difference. All of a sudden now, Google's support engineers are answering questions in Stack Overflow and and voting things up, and it really makes solving problems with their APIs so much better. So I think that we didn't choose Google App Engine because of their developer support, but certainly their developer support is a good reason for us to use their platform, because as they add more and more features to it, and as things get complicated, it's a great resource.
Particularly for APIs, it's like the best place to get support is usually from the creator of the API itself. So if there are any issues, then we have to start there and just start hitting up, their service channel. And they're usually really responsive too. If it's something more generic, then we'll probably end up like on Stack Overflow or other kind of like combination site like that. I think we use that a lot for like Java development, sometimes JavaScript. If we're on Stack Overflow, sometimes the wording of the question isn't exactly what we want, what we're trying to do. So we just skip to the responses to see which ones have got the highest numbers of like likes or like favorites responses, and then working back from some of the answers that come in there, then we'll start rethinking our question, reread the original question on Stack Overflow, and then test it out, to get some inspiration for how to work around some of the challenges that we're getting.
The first pass for us is going to be going to the platform or OS developer site. As I said, those usually have really good information. They have forums in them. So we'll search, the API SDKs. We'll see what they have, if it's something that hits that level. If we're looking for general problems and/or bugs, Stack Overflow is usually the first thing we search. There's a tremendous amount of good information, and really seem to be a good developer community that's grown up in Stack Overflow. So that's definitely one of our go-to resources. If it's a more specific issue with an API or SDK, we'll obviously hit their documentation. Any developer site that has a Git satisfaction or a really good implementation where we can communicate with them is a plus. And we're not afraid to actually get on the phone whenever possible and reach out to someone verbally as well. Just to kind of, sometimes it requires that just little bit of back and forth, that instead of having 10 emails back and forth, you can handle with one phone conversation or one Skype conversation. So we'll do that as well. I think because Stack Overflow is such a common resource for developers to go check out, as much as possible, if they can have their own community members participate in Stack Overflow, and either offer up responses that they have or validate responses that have been given by the community. That really is the key. The validation of someone else's response or giving the response is really very important. We can read through Stack Overflow and try and find the response that seems like it's the best one. But if we have someone from a developer program saying, yep, you guys got it right, here's your response, that's absolutely the one we go with. We don't have to figure out if it's one of two solutions that might be out there. Just in general, validating information is very important and would be fantastic to bring to a third-party site like a Stack Overflow or GitHub.
Portals and forums and mailing lists and the like, and that on a per API SDK-ish sort of basis, and that from a developer program can be valuable. The difficulty is getting the word out, making sure people realize that they're there, and conversely then making sure that the organization is going to answer the questions that show up in a reasonably timely fashion. That doesn't mean you have to respond in 5 minutes, but responding in 5 days, and that's going to be more of a problem. And so we've had people in that they set the things up and then they become moribund because nobody realizes they're there. Maybe they're like behind a registration wall even to read the forums. And so therefore, they don't get indexed by the search engines, and that, people don't realize that they happen to be there. And then, therefore, the people who were supposed to be monitoring them, it falls lower and lower on their priority list because nobody's asking any questions, and it's a death spiral. And so in my personal recommendation would be only open your own dedicated forums, and that if you are going to commit the resources to get critical mass so that it becomes self-sustaining. And that the reason why Stack Overflow works for the various tags and that isn't because, Stack Overflow is this, wonderful website. It's cool and all, but it's the fact that, once you get critical mass around a tag, it becomes somewhat self-sustaining. And so you've got people other than your staff helping to answer questions and the like, and that where the community becomes a force multiplier for you. In Jim Collins's, Built to Last, and that he talks about, pushing the flywheel, and that you got to keep pushing that flywheel, and that, and eventually after enough pushes, it starts kind of, it's got enough momentum and that it can roll on its own, and you're not having to, put as much effort. Same game with these forums, and that if you're willing to invest the effort up front so that you can have your own flywheel, great. If you're not sure you want to do all the investment in terms of staff time, and that, consider trying to leverage something that can get you that flywheel easier, such as just, endorsing a Stack Overflow tag.